Check this out. We've got the perfect lens to pair with your A7C Mark II or ZV-E1. This is the new 20mm f2.8 autofocus lens from Viltrox. It's compact, it's lightweight, it's optically pretty solid, and most importantly, only costs $158? Did I get that right? I did. That's insane. So we'll get to the technicals of the lens in a second, but first let's take a look at some of the photos I got with this lens plus the A7C Mark II. On top of some great looking photos, thanks to the compact combination of this lens and the A7C Mark II, it's a perfect little walk around setup that's easy to be discreet with, like filming in the gym or taking with you to capture some memories like going out to dinner. Hey guys, I'm here with Andrew 𝗖𝗘𝗥𝗦. We go way back. We actually basically started our photography and videography journey together. I mean, we shot weddings together, events, I mean, you name it. We basically learned it at the same time. So today I have an interesting lens from Viltrox.
Okay.
This is the Viltrox 20mm f2.8.
Good focal length. Autofocus?
Autofocus.
Is it made for full frame?
It is made for full frame.
Okay.
So here, check this out. This is the A7C Mark II. You know, like
so sick.
Check out like the framing.
Yeah. No, I really like this. Really nice compact lens, really good for like a travel setup in a way.
Yeah.
And this sort of focal length is great for if you were to want to just walk around and photograph a whole trip kind of thing. I think that'd be great.
All right, let's do a little vlogging test in the rain. Totally normal YouTuber behavior. If you watched my DJI Pocket 3 review, I was talking about how 20mm is like the best focal length for vlogging. It's because it's just wide enough of a field of view where it's not claustrophobic and you get a nice composition for these types of walk and talk shots. All right, let me switch over from no stabilization to active stabilization. I've been talking about this in my ZV-E1 and A7C Mark II videos lately, but Sony's in-body image stabilization just seems to work a little bit better when you use native lenses and a little bit worse when you use third-party lenses like this Viltrox 20mm lens. Now I'm gonna switch it over to dynamic active stabilization to see how well that does. So now we're using dynamic active stabilization. It's cropped in a little bit more, so I have to hold my arm out just a little bit further to get some proper framing. But let me know in the comment section down below on your thoughts on the performance of the stabilization right now with this setup with the ZV-E1 and the Viltrox 20mm. Is it stable? Is it smooth? How does it look? All right, let's take a quick look at the build quality of this lens. Like I said, this lens is super compact, measuring in at about 2.5 by 2.5 inches and weighing just 1/3 of a pound or about 157 grams. The housing is made out of a plastic composite, so it doesn't feel the most premium, but I can't really be too upset about that at this price. Its optical design includes 10 optical elements with coatings to produce contrasty images with minimal flaring and ghosting. The lens also uses a nearly silent stepper motor for autofocus that supports Sony's latest eye and face detection autofocus. It also includes a 7 aperture blade diaphragm to create pretty decent looking bokeh, which we'll talk more about later. And here's a really neat feature. Even though it's only $158, Viltrox decided to add a USB-C port to the back of this lens, meaning that it's able to get firmware updates as any issues arise or are reported. So for example, if the lens has some weird autofocus compatibility issues with a later camera that comes out, Viltrox can put out a firmware update and you as a user can update your lens to make it now work properly. This actually was super clutch for me because I was doing some dynamic active stabilization tests with this lens and the results I was getting was absolutely abysmal. But once I updated the firmware, I was getting perfectly stable looking footage. Okay, let's move on to image quality and see whether or not photos and video shot on this lens are any good. Starting with sharpness, this lens is surprisingly sharp in the center of the frame, from f2.8 all the way down to f5.6, but the opposite is true about the corners. Corner sharpness is pretty weak. From f2.8 all the way down to f5.6, there's really no improvement. You can also notice that there's a combination of both barrel and pincushion distortion happening throughout the frame, as well as some vignetting at f2.8. But overall, considering it's a budget 20mm lens, it's a pretty respectable image. Bokeh is also pretty smooth with good fall off, but because of the 7-bladed aperture, you don't quite get super circular bokeh. Now, personally, I don't think that this is a huge negative. I mean, it's a 20mm focal length with an f2.8 aperture, so it's not like you were necessarily trying to get a ton of bokeh out of this lens anyways. This lens also has pretty good flare and ghosting control thanks to the coatings applied to the glass elements, which for this price point, I'm surprised at just how well it handles all of these different scenarios. It does, however, show chromatic aberration in high contrast scenes. Ha! Got him. I knew a $158 lens couldn't be that good. Well, I still didn't get chromatic aberration showing up that often, so for the most part, it's pretty well controlled, except for super high contrast situations. And another really neat thing about this lens is that it has quite a good minimum close focus distance of just 7.5 inches, meaning you can get really up close and personal with your subject, which is great for both narrative work, but also just nice for showcasing products in front of the camera. And speaking of focus, all right, let's do some autofocus tests in the rain, because why not? It'll look cool. Is it autofocusing? We'll see how that looks. Overall, the autofocus looks like it performs extremely well. I mean, not as well as G Master native Sony lens well, but like 95% of the way there. On top of that, there aren't any compatibility issues. This lens is able to take full advantage of Sony's brand new AI-based subject recognition autofocus system. So things like animal tracking, eye tracking, face tracking, body posture tracking, all of those things work with this lens. So let's talk about pricing and some alternative options you have for a 20mm lens. How much would you guess a 20mm f2.8 autofocus lens would be?
For reference, my 35mm f1.4 was $1,600 when I started off. The Sigma 16mm f1.4, I think, that one was $600. So I think this one feels a little bit more on the quality side of that. So I would say around $600.
What if I said that that was $150?
$150?
Again, this Viltrox 20mm f2.8 comes in at $158. The closest lens I can think of would be the Tamron 20mm f2.8, which is also a pretty good lens, but it is also larger and more expensive, coming in at $299. After that, for third-party options, you have the likes of the Sigma 20mm f2, Sigma 20mm f1.4, or the Tokina Firen 20mm f2, which all three are more expensive, coming in at $699, $899, and $949. So it's not really even worth comparing them. The closest lens then that I would actually consider would be the Sony 20mm f1.8G, which I've tested before and is a phenomenal lens. It's not as compact, but it's better in every other way. The only issue is that it's $898. When I review lenses on this channel, and it's quite often, at the end I usually do a little bit of a dance for you and talk about, you know, oh, if you shoot X, Y, or Z, if you shoot weddings or music videos or vlogs, then this lens might be good for you, you know, if it's in your budget, yada, yada, yada. With this lens, that's not really the case. If you don't have a 20mm or wider focal length in your kit, I would say go ahead and buy this lens. It's only $158. Who knows, it might turn out you absolutely love this lens and you use it a ton, or you use it once in a blue moon, but at $158, it's worth a shot. And the best thing about this lens isn't even the price, it's that it's actually a good lens. It's just that the price makes it an incredible value. It's also so affordable that it would make a great present for your photographer or filmmaker friend this Christmas. If you're interested in checking out this lens, link will be in the description down below. All right, that's it for this one. If you enjoyed or learned something new, go ahead and hit that like and subscribe. And if you want to watch another video, here's one that YouTube thought you need to watch. And as always, I'll see you in the next one. Peace.